further debate? I recognize the member for Guelph.
Thank you, Speaker. Honored to rise today to debate Bill 40 at third reading. And Speaker, I find it very interesting that the government has the word affordable energy in the title of this bill, because they're making our electricity system less affordable as we speak. On November this year, just in the last month, they've jacked up electricity prices by 29% due to the policies of the Ford government. Now, they've tried to hide that in the fall economic statement by increasing the hydro subsidy that the Liberal government brought in prior to 2018. And I remember in the 2018 election, the Conservatives railed against this expensive hydro subsidy, which I think at the time cost taxpayers, the Conservatives railed against the Liberal one because it cost taxpayers like $5 billion. So that's now up to almost $7 billion. I asked the Financial Accountability Officer to do a study of who benefits the most from this subsidy. And lo and behold, it's the wealthy. Millionaires, billionaires, people with 6, 7, and 8-figure incomes disproportionately benefit from the government's hydro subsidy. Why? Because it's kind of common sense. They use the most electricity. So I just want to ask members opposite why you're putting forward energy policies that jack up prices by almost 30%, and according to the IESO's own estimates, are going to significantly go up over the next decade, and then turn around and spend billions of dollars subsidizing electricity prices for the wealthy. At a time when the government says, you know what, we don't have money for health care, our hospitals are taking out lines of credit to meet payroll. They say we don't have money to build deeply affordable housing at a time when, tragically, 81,000 people are experiencing homelessness. They say we don't have money for our schools at a time when they're experiencing a $1,500 per student cut, which is, leading to hardships in our schools and in the education environment. And yet, they have the money to subsidize hydro rates for the wealthy while they're increasing hydro rates. So what's causing the increase? Well, primarily the increase in nuclear power. Now, I just want to be clear, Speaker. Ontario Greens, we're not opposed to nuclear power. We support rebuilding Darlington and Bruce, providing long-term reliable power for decades to come. About half of our grid now is supplied by those nuclear units. But let's look at what's happening with SMRs right now. So the 4 SMRs this government's bringing forward, estimated cost of them in 2022 was $4.8 billion. That cost has escalated now to almost $21 billion. No wonder electricity prices are going through the roof already and are going to continue to go through the roof because the government is choosing high-cost sources of generation rather than looking at where the entire world is putting their energy dollars, wind, solar, and battery storage, because they are now the cheapest sources of electricity generation anywhere in the world. But Ontario's missing in action. And then I find it interesting that the government, and I listened to the minister's speech earlier this morning, says, you know what, we want to be independent. We don't want any foreign interference into our electricity grid. So guess what technology these SMRs are? Oh, U.S.-based technology. They chose a U.S. technology over Canadian technology, and now they're locking us in to having to buy enriched U.S. uranium in order to power those SMRs. So I don't know why they're doing that, especially at a time when the Trump administration is economically attacking the province of Ontario and the country of Canada. They're also ramping up gas plants, which will increase electricity prices as well, because gas and nuclear are 3 to 3.5 times more expensive than wind, solar, and battery storage, according to IESO's own data. I'm just using IESO data. I hear the minister heckling me over there. I know the facts hurt. I know the IESO's facts hurt. when you're making decisions that are going to increase electricity prices for Ontarians. I know that hurts because it's going to hurt politically. I mean, I guess they may continue to try to hide it, but then that's going to take money away from healthcare, education, housing, and a whole bunch of other things. So they got some tough choices to make over there. So ramping up gas plants means making us even more dependent on fossil gas from the U.S., because about 70% of the gas going into these gas plants are from the U.S. So I don't see what's affordable about Bill 40, and I don't see what's protecting us from the threat of the U.S. in Bill 40. I don't get it. I don't get it. I think the facts say otherwise. So not only are ramping up gas plants going to increase electricity prices, but it's also going to make our grid dirtier and less competitive. When the current government was elected in 2018, Ontario's grid was 96% clean, emission-free, one of the cleanest grids in the world. I've heard the industry minister say over and over again that part of what has enabled Ontario to attract investment, especially EV battery manufacturing investment, is the competitive advantage Ontario's clean grid provides the province. I just met with the Canadian manufacturers and exporters, I believe it was yesterday or the day before here at Queen's Park, and they told me that for some of their big plants, their competitive advantage is that Ontario has a clean grid. So what's happened to that grid in the almost 8 years the current government's been in office? It's gone from 96% clean to only 84% clean. A 12% decrease in what is our competitive advantage in attracting global capital. And it's only going to get worse. According to the ISO's own estimates, we're going to see a 400% increase in climate pollution on Ontario's grid because this government is ramping up gas plants. And instead of using them as peaker plants, maybe, there just in case of an emergency, which would be an acceptable thing to do, they're running a lot of these plants 24/7. In Toronto, the Portland's gas plant is the largest single source of climate pollution and toxic air pollution in the city of Toronto. As a matter of fact, builders have had to change their building plans because they can't build tall buildings with the windows being able to open because the air around the plant is so toxic to people. So, when I met with the manufacturers, they were saying that that's going to hurt them, especially internally within their corporate networks, of attracting capital investment to Ontario because their companies want to invest in decarbonization, and we're losing. Ontario is losing our competitive advantage of a clean grid because of the policies of the current government, which, by the way, will increase prices, so making us less competitive doubly. The other thing that the increase in gas is doing is, and this is a little bit complicated, so I'm going to try to explain it. The Association of Major Power Producers brought this to my attention when they were here this week, that when electricity prices go up, it's driven by the price of gas, because that's the most expensive electricity that's being bought on the market. So when the price goes up, that increased price applies to all sources of generation, nuclear, wind, solar, whatever. So in a sense, we're actually paying an industrial carbon tax on emission-free electricity right now. So I would encourage the members opposite, especially the minister, to do a directive to the IESO to say, you know what, when you look at the market price of electricity, make sure you don't include the full price of gas, because that full price is transferring carbon pricing onto emission-free electricity, which is never designed for that. We should make sure we have the competitive advantage of clean electricity and not have the industrial carbon price applied to it. I want to close, Speaker, in the final couple of minutes I have, to say to the members opposite that the government's energy policies, driven by Bill 5 and Bill 40, is giving an unfair advantage to gas producers, They've changed the rules in the L2, the long-term energy procurement process, to favor gas generators, which is going to increase climate pollution. And they're doing it at a time when the green energy transition, the economy for the green energy transition, is now worth $8 trillion. $2.2 trillion being invested in the green energy transition just this year, just in 2025 alone. Double what's being invested in fossil fuels. So this government is ramping up investments in fossil fuels, ripping up renewable energy contracts at a time when the rest of the world is going in the complete opposite direction. Why? Because investors want to invest in the lowest cost sources of electricity. But for whatever reason, this government doesn't want to do that. So how does that hurt Ontario? It means we're missing out on the opportunity to have our fair share of that $2.2 trillion investment this year, to create good-paying jobs right here in Ontario, to diversify our economy, to diversify our export markets at a time when we want to become less dependent on the U.S. This government's making us more dependent on the U.S. in our energy sector because for whatever reason, they're just ideologically opposed to the lowest sources of electricity generation, wind, solar, and battery storage. And so I want to say to the people of Ontario, let's put pressure on this government to invest in renewables so we get those investment dollars here, so we create good-paying jobs in Ontario, so we lower electricity prices, so we lower the emissions profile of our grid to make it more competitive, so we can attract more investment in manufacturing in Ontario to create even more good-paying jobs, and all at the same time reduce climate pollution and help us meet our climate obligations, which unfortunately in the fall economic statement, this government canceled climate action. So we can have win, win, win if you would end your opposition to low-cost renewables.
Thank you.